My name is Gabby Palladino, and today I'll be presenting my comparative analysis of the political systems of three countries: the United States, China, and Norway. In this presentation, I will examine how these countries' forms of government, democratic structures, and political institutions differ, and what these differences reveal about their political systems. So here's an outline of what I'm going to be covering today. The political systems of the United States, China, and Norway, a deeper look into each country's forms of government, a comparison of their democratic structures, and an overview of the political institutions and practices. By the end of this presentation, you'll have a clearer understanding of how these three countries approach governance, democracy, and citizen participation. In this section, I'll be diving into a comparative analysis of the political systems of China, the United States, and Norway. Each country operates under very different political structures with the varying degrees of political freedom, citizens' participation, and institutional frameworks. We'll begin by exploring their forms of government. So when comparing the political systems of these three countries, it's important to understand their forms of government, democratic structures, political institutions, practices, and cultural factors. While these countries will focus on national stability and governance, they differ significantly in their political freedoms, governance, and structures. The constitutional differences in each of these countries influence how power is distributed and how decisions are made. This analysis will explore these differences and their impact on governance. Let's start with China. China operates under an authoritarian regime, specifically a single-party communist dictatorship. The Communist Party of China holds a monopoly on political power. They are indirect elections, but they're heavily controlled, and there's no real political pluralism. Essentially, most representatives in government are members of the CPC. Although China's constitution codifies some democratic rights, they are subordinate to authority of the Communist Party. This structure allows for a tightly controlled political environment with little room for opposition. Now moving on to the United States. The United States functions as a federal democratic republic. It operates under a system of government where powers are divided between the national government and state governments. There's a strong separation of powers among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, which ensures a system of checks and balances. Elections are free and fair, and the country's political system emphasizes adherence to democratic values, the rule of law, and fundamental freedoms. The U.S. Constitution serves as a framework for governance and protects individual rights. Now let's turn to Norway. Norway is a parliamentary democracy and constitutional monarchy. The monarch is the ceremonial head of state, which the prime minister serves as the head of government. The political system allows for free and fair elections, and political power rotates regularly between different political parties. Norway's constitution was enacted in 1814, and this emphasizes the political equality and individual liberty, and the country is known for its strong social democratic values. So we're going to talk about the democratic structures, so like the form of government. Let's look at in China, the level of democracy is quite limited. It's primarily an authoritarian state where the Communist Party holds tight control over political life. Political freedom is severely suppressed with no opposition parties or dissenting voices limited or heavily restricted. Citizen participation is very minimal, as political engagement is strictly controlled by the state. In contrast, the United States has much more of a functional democratic structure. While challenges like voter suppression and influence of money in politics do exist, the system still allows for free and competitive elections. Political freedom in the U.S. is robust, with protections for individual rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Citizen participation is encouraged with a high level of involvement in elections and civic activities. There are, however, ongoing debates about how to ensure that participation is truly equal and fair for all citizens. Norway stands out as one of the most democratic countries in the world. The level of democracy is fairly high, and with a political system that respects civil liberties and guarantees political freedom. Citizens in Norway enjoy extensive rights, including a free press and the ability to hold the government accountable. The country promotes strong citizen participation with an emphasis on compromise and consensus building. And Norway's democracy is marked by political equality and a commitment to social democratic principles, making it a model for other nations. Now let's take a look in the political institutions and practices in each country. In China, political institutions are highly centralized under the Communist Party. The National People's Congress, while technically the highest legislative body, plays a ceremonial role, with real decision-making power lying with the party leadership. Political engagement is limited, and the opposition to the CPC is not tolerated. China's culture is deeply authoritarian, with a focus on maintaining the party's control and limiting political freedoms. In the United States, political institutions are divided into three branches of government: the executive, legislative, and the judicial. These branches operate under a system of checks and balances, ensuring that no branch can dominate the others. Practices in the U.S. encourage a pluralistic political culture where different political parties compete for power and influence. However, these challenges, like gerrymandering and the influence of money in politics, remain issues. The culture in the U.S. is deeply democratic, focusing on individual freedoms and the rule of law. Norway's political institutions are characterized by a parliamentary democracy where the prime minister and cabinet are responsible to the parliament. Norway also has a constitutional monarchy, with the monarch serving as a ceremonial figurehead. The country's political practices emphasize compromise and consensus, especially within the coalition government. Norway's commitment to social democracy is reflected in its strong welfare state and the promotion of equality. The culture in Norway is cooperative, with a high level of public engagement and trust in the political system. So, in conclusion, we see three very different political systems at play here. China is more of an authoritarian state with the power centralized under the Communist Party, with limited political freedom and minimal citizen participation. While the United States is a federal democracy with a system of checks and balances, but faces challenges like voter suppression and campaign finance issues. And lastly, Norway is a highly democratic country known for its political equality, civil liberties, and strong citizens' participation in political issues. So overall, these differences highlight how each country's governance structure and democratic values and political institutions influence the way power is exercised. Moving on to the comparative analysis of civic engagement, where we explore civic engagement in the United States, China, and Norway. Civic engagement refers to how citizens participate in their political systems, whether through voting, protests, civil society and involvement, or other forms of political participation. So, in the United States, citizen participation is a cornerstone of democracy. Voting in local, state, and national elections, it's the primary mode of political engagement. Elections are held regularly every 4 years for the presidency and every 2 years for congressional seats. This ensures continuous citizen involvement in the political process. Public discourse and protests are also central to civic participation in the United States. Town halls, social media engagement, and public demonstration like Black Lives Matter movement or the Women's March provide platforms for citizens to voice their own opinions and challenge the status quo. Political rights, including the power to vote and remove officials from office, instill a strong sense of political responsibility in American citizens. On the other hand, China's model of citizens' participation is tightly regulated. The Chinese Communist Party remains strict control over political engagements. Citizens can vote for local representatives, but higher-level candidates are pre-approved by the CCP, meaning there's little room for political pluralism. Freedom of expression is highly restricted, and challenging the government can result in severe punishments. In contrast, Norway fosters a high level of citizen engagement. Voting, public hearings, and participation in civil society groups are encouraged, and state provides ample opportunities for political participation at both the national and local levels. There is a deep level of mutual trust between the government and its citizens. Norwegians are highly engaged politically, with a consistent high voter turnout reflecting the strength of their democratic culture. Their voices feel heard, and their participation is a key part of Norway's success. Now, getting into the relationships between the citizens and state in each of these countries. In the United States, the relationship is grounded in individual rights and a system of checks and balances. The Constitution provides mechanisms to ensure no branch of government becomes too powerful, and politicians are generally respected, but they also frequently questioned and critiqued by the public, keeping the government responsive and accountable for its citizens. This constant feedback loop is a key feature of the American democracy. In China, the relationship is more controlled. Citizens are expected to be obedient and respectful to the CCP, which holds ultimate authority. The government is opaque, and the government is unresponsive to the needs of the requested citizens. Any form of dissent is heavily punished, reinforcing the power dynamics between the state and the people. In Norway, there is a strong sense of cooperation and mutual trust between citizens and the state. Norwegians view the government as a protector of social services and welfare, and this relationship fosters trust in public institutions. Transparency is also a hallmark of Norwegian governments, with citizens having ample avenues to influence policies and engage with their government. So interest groups and social movements play a critical role in shaping public policies in the United States. With a diverse political landscape, interest groups such as I mentioned in my paper, the National Rifle Association, the American Civil Liberties Union, and Greenpeace advocate for a wide range of causes. Lobbying is an entrenched part of the political system, and these groups influence policy on the issues like gun rights, environmental protection, and civil liberties. In China, the state is tightly controls of all forms of interest groups and social movements. Any independent movement is typically suppressed. So, the only official standing groups, like the All China Federation of Trade Unions, serve the interests of the state rather than citizenry. As in Norway, on the other hand, boasts a vibrant and diverse civil liberty. Interest groups and social movements in Norway have a significant impact on public policy. Groups focused on the environmental protection, gender equality, and LGBTQ+ rights actively push for reforms and influence for the government's agenda. Norway's an open political environment ensures that these groups can function freely and affect change within the political system. So overall, the political and civic cultures of the United States and Norway differ in China sharply in the terms of citizen engagement, relationships with the state, and the roles of interest groups. The United States promotes more active participatory culture with a broad citizen involvement, while China imposes strict control over political engagement and civil society. Norway balances high levels of citizens' participation with a cooperative and transparent relationship between the government and the people. Moving on to the part 3, which is the last part, where we'll be comparing the political ideologies, party systems, and policy priorities of these 3 countries. So, in the United States, the dominant political ideology are liberalism and conservatism. Liberalism emphasizes individual rights, social welfare, and government intervention in the economy, while conservatism stresses limited government, personal responsibility, and free market principles. The U.S. political landscape is primarily dominated by 2 major parties, the Democratic Party, which tends to lean more liberal, and the Republican Party, which tends to lean more conservative. There's a moderate presence of third parties, though they often struggle to compete with the 2 main parties. China, in contrast, operates as under a single-party system dominated by the Chinese Communist Party. The dominant ideology is a mix of Marxism, Leninism, and which is a basis for the country's governance. The CCP is tightly controls policymaking, which is focused on long-term national goals, such as economic growth and social stability. There's little room for political freedom or diversity of thought, and any attempts to challenge CCP's policies are heavily suppressed. Finally, let's take a look at Norway political ideology. Norway's dominant ideology represents a balance between social democracy and conservatism. The country operates under a parliamentary democracy with a constitutional monarchy, where power is divided between the parliament and the monarchy, with the monarch serving as a ceremonial figurehead. Norway has a multi-party system with significant representation from parties like the Labour Party, Progress Party, Conservative Party, and the Green Party. This diversity party reflects the political landscape and includes both social democratic and conservative principles. Now let's take a look into the party systems in the United States, China, and Norway. These systems are foundational in shaping the political landscape and governing processes within each country. The U.S. operates under a two-party system with the Democratic-Republican parties dominating the political sphere. This results in political polarization, where the debates on issues like healthcare, immigration, taxation, social welfare, and military economic leadership often create gridlock. Third parties have minimal influence as the two-party system is deeply entrenched, making it difficult for smaller parties to make impact on national policy making. China, on the other hand, operates as a single-party system controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP holds complete control over the government with no opposition, effectively centralizing power. This enables China to push forward long-term policies and ideological goals without significant resistance. In contrast, Norway features a multi-party system, which facilitates in coalition governments and compromise among multiple political parties. This allows for a more balanced approach into policymaking, ensuring that social welfare, economic equality, and political stability are prioritized in government decisions. The multi-party system in Norway fosters a political pluralism and cooperation rather than an intense partisanship. Now let's turn to policy priorities of each country. In the United States, policy debates are often driven by key issues such as social inequality, racial tensions, and environmental concerns. This political landscape is highly polarized, leading to vigorous debates and lobbying across all sectors of society. As a result, policies span a wide range of areas, from maintaining a robust welfare system to tackling environmental sustainability and ensuring more equitable economic distribution. The U.S. continues to grapple with these challenges such as income inequality, healthcare access, and addressing the impacts of climate change, all while balancing a competitive market-driven economy. In China, the emphasis is placed on the continuous economic growth and social stability, with policies tightly aligned with the long-term objectives of the CCP. China's political system allows for a highly centralized approach where the government can plan and implement policies with a focus on maintaining growth and political stability. The CCP is heavily involved in regulating industries, fostering infrastructure development, and guiding the country toward modernization. Turning to Norway, the country's policy priorities center on healthcare, education, pension systems, and environmental sustainability. Norway has a strong focus on providing its citizens with high-quality social welfare services, including universal healthcare and education. The country also places heavy emphasis on sustainable development, with policies aimed at addressing climate change and promoting green energy. Norway's pension system is robust, ensuring that all citizens are provided in their retirement years. These priorities reflect on the nation's commitment to maintaining a high standard of living for all of its citizens while being proactive about addressing environmental challenges. In conclusion, the differences of political ideologies, party systems, and policy priorities among the United States, China, and Norway reveal distinct approaches to governance and problem solving in today's global political environment. So overall, these comparisons not only uncover the differences in governance structures, but also highlight the varied priorities in addressing significant issues like citizen participation, social justice, environmental sustainability, and global economic influence. So the study of these countries offers a greater understanding of the complexities that go into all of this. Here are my references. I have 2 pages of references. Thank you, and this was my 3 countries term project. I hope you enjoyed.